party of motley adventurers explored the darkened tunnels illuminated only by torchlight, battling terrible creatures, dodging devious traps, and looting priceless treasures. This is the iconic scene envisioned by Dungeons & Dragons creators Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson when they created the tabletop game in 1974. Beyond dice rolls and stat sheets, the lore of the countless worlds, dimensions, and planes of existence the franchise encompasses is vast. Among these, the land of Faerûn is among the most popular, its sweeping borders part of the world known as the Forgotten Realms. In the beginning, there was only a primordial darkness permeating the cosmos. Ruled by the overgod Ao, the void was home to the twin goddesses Selûne, the mood maiden of the stars, light and freedom, and her sister Shar, the mistress of the night, presiding over darkness, secrecy, and entropy. Bitter enemies, their conflict would give rise to much of the universe, as their shed essence coalesced into the world of Abir Toril, and Selûne's shed essence gave rise to many of the first gods. Located in the prime material plane, Abir Toril, literally Cradle of Life, was surrounded by the elemental inner planes of air, water, earth, and fire, as well as the Feywild, the vibrant domain of the Fey, and the Shadowfell, a place of perpetual gloom and death twisted by Shar. In turn, these inner planes were surrounded by the outer planes, where the Estelar pantheon of gods resided with their followers. In its raw form, magic is an unstable and chaotic power. To harness the arcane energy, the Weave was created by Mistral, the first goddess of magic. Under her care, its magical energy could be channeled by mortal beings that need not fear its backlash consuming their world. With the planet of Abir Toril newly formed, its shaping would fall to the powerful beings known as primordials. Having arisen from pure elemental chaos, their godlike power allowed them to create the planet's first supercontinent of Meruboros. As beings of raw elemental essence, their nature embraced the chaotic cycle of creation and destruction, putting them at odds with the gods who sought to impose order. For countless millennia, the primordials and the gods fought to impose their will in the Dawn War, during which time the draconic god Io was cleaved in two by the primordial Erech Hus, from which would arise Bahamut and Tiamat, the progenitors of dragonkind. The struggle finally reached a climax when the primordial Asgaroth the World Shaper hurled the ice moon of Zotha at the planet, forcing Ao himself to intervene in an event known as the Tearfall. Abir Toril was divided into two identical planets in the Sundering, with Abir given to most of the surviving primordials, where it would be free of divine influence, while Toril was claimed by the gods for their mortal creations to live. It was this world that would become known as the Forgotten Realms. The Days of Thunder saw the arrival of the creator races. These were the reptilian Saruk, the amphibious Batraki, and avian Aeri, each building the first empires and ruling the planet for thousands of years. The Tearfall catastrophe abruptly ended their rule of the planet when the ice moon crashed into Meruboros and fractured it into various smaller continents. Although they existed in some form during the First Age, giants and dragons would come to fill the power vacuum, leading to the start of the Dawn Age. Humans naturally evolved on Toril during the Days of Thunder, as well as migrating from Earth via a magical portal, often serving as slaves or prey for other races. Elves would arrive from the Feywild during the Dawn Age, guided by their pantheon of gods, the Seldirine. It was also around this time that the first dwarves would be crafted by the god Moradin in his subterranean forges. Indeed, It would be the elves that would end the long reign of the dragons on Toril, creating a magical artifact called the Dracarage Mythal. Elven high mages would drive all dragons inhabiting the Forgotten Realms temporarily insane, causing them to attack each other in a homicidal rage. This process would be periodically repeated over the years to keep the population of the mighty creatures in check and allow the elves to flourish as the period of the first flowering began. Using yet more powerful magic, the elves would create the island of Evermeet to serve as a homeland, resulting in another cataclysm known as the First Sundering. Yet, even they would fall to infighting as their empires clashed during the Crown Wars. During this conflict, a faction of the elves turned to dark magic, and were thus cursed by their chief deity, Corellon Larethian, into becoming the Dark Elves known as Drow, banishing them to the Underdark beneath Faerûn. It would be here that they would construct the city of Menzoberranzan and worship the fallen spider goddess Loth. Although humans had largely been marginalized until this time, the elves' fall into disarray finally allowed their rise to power during the founding time. Over a period of 6,000 years, humans spread into lands often scarred by magic or abandoned by previous inhabitants. The earliest human empires appeared, such as Imaskar, or the northern city-states that would eventually become Netheril. Dwarves, too, expanded their underground kingdoms of Shanatar and Delzoun. The age of humanity dawned as various empires rose to power around Faerûn and the rest of the world, including Mulholland, Unther, Cormyr, and Kalimshan. Events continued to unfold over the centuries across Faerûn and the rest of the Forgotten Realms. After having stood for over 3,000 years, the Empire of Netheril fell after the hubristic archwizard Karsus attempted to seize the weave for himself. As a mere mortal, he was unable to control the magical energy and caused it to collapse, forcing the goddess Mistral to sacrifice herself and save the world from destruction. The fabled flying cities of Netheril plummeted to the ground, created the desert of Anarok. The event would be remembered as Karsus's folly, necessitating divine powers to place limits on the use of magic to prevent its recurrence. The momentous occasion known as the Dale Reckoning occurred when the elves of the kingdom of Corminthir signed a treaty with the Dalesfolk, the original human settlers of the Dale lands. Allowing humans to settle in the region marked this event as the basis for the calendar used throughout Faerûn, denoted by DR next to the year. At this point, 31,000 years had passed since the Tearfall. It would be the year 1358 DR when a calamity of divine proportions befell the Forgotten Realms. Displeased by the recklessness of the gods, the supreme being, Ao, banished them to the planet in mortal bodies. Known as the Time of Troubles, this caused magic to become unstable and resulted in the deaths of several deities, such as the Lord of the Dead, Mirkal, and Baal, god of murder. Mystra, the reincarnation of Mistral, would also be struck down by the protector god Helm after she attempted to return to the outer planes against Ao's wishes. Her reincarnation this time would be a mortal spellcaster named Ariel Manx, known as Midnight. In fact, it had been Midnight and a party of fellow adventurers that had recovered the Tablets of Fate, satisfying Ao so that he allowed the surviving gods to return to their divine realms in the outer planes. Never far from disaster, it would be less than 30 years after the time of troubles in Toril when the new Mystra would be killed by the god Cyric as he wielded the God's Bane artifact. With no one to maintain it, the weave shattered, causing parts of the Forgotten Realms and Ebir to swap places. Parts of the landscape warped with wild magic, and races were transformed in the event known as the Spell Plague. With the two worlds needing to be realigned, a second sundering was necessary, involving earthquakes and eruptions as Abir and Toril were pulled apart and the gods slain during the time of troubles were restored in the era of upheaval. Mystra would reconstitute into her current form around this time. Other than Faerûn, the continents of the Forgotten Realms consist of Karatur in the east, Zakara across the Great Sea to the south, and Maztica, a largely unexplored land across the trackless sea to the west. Faerûn itself contains many city-states, kingdoms, and empires as the most popular setting. Outside of the dwarf holds in the mountains, such as Mithril Hall, powerful and independent city-state dominate northern Faerûn, with Waterdeep being the largest. Ruled by the Lords of Waterdeep, the City of Splendors is a hub of trade and intrigue, having been built over an ancient elven settlement. Just outside the city is Mount Waterdeep, the former home of the Melarkine dwarves, whose tunnels continue to attract adventurers in search of wealth. Another wealthy port city, Baldur's Gate, lies on the Sword Coast at the mouth of the river Chionthar, defended by Flaming Fist mercenaries and ruled by the Council of Four. It was founded by the hero Baldurin before he vanished across the trackless sea. Three main sections comprise Baldur's Gate: the shanty town of the outer city along the roads, and Dusthawk Hill, the lower city between the old wall and the river Chionthar, and the posh upper city to the north. The Jewel of the North, Neverwinter, was originally an elven settlement, but has since grown to become a major metropolitan city. Ruled by a single lord, its name derives from the volcanic heat of Mount Hottenau at its heart that prevents the harbor and gardens from freezing in the winter. The same volcano would erupt in 1451 DR and destroy much of the city, necessitating its rebuilding. It would take 40 years, but Neverwinter would regain its status as the center of commerce and culture, thanks to the efforts of Lord Neverember. One of the newer powers in the region, Ultiergard is a small nation with the city of Etiril serving as its capital. Torm is the patron deity here, the god of duty, righteousness, and valor. Known as the Kingdom of the Two Suns, Ultiergard is under the protection of the Knights of the Shield, an elite cavalry order of Hell Riders. Apt, since Etiril was once temporarily transported to Avernus, the first of the Nine Hells, in 1492 DR, resulting in its physical deformation as well as increasing its tiefling population. Moving into the heartlands of Faerûn, the forest kingdom of Cormyr is one of the foremost destinations. The Oberskir line claims the title of royal family, overseeing culture that values chivalry and discipline. The Purple Dragons form the standing army of Cormyr, renowned for their loyalty, strength, and skill. Although adventurers are regulated by law here, the city of Shade, Ultanthar, and the ruins of Myth Draenor have drawn many would-be heroes over the years. Less savory in reputation than its neighbors, Am is a land where money rules. Greed and paranoia fuel the ambitions of the Council of Five, the rulers of the merchant nation, having been the Council of Six before the Spell Plague. Indeed, anyone wishing to acquire political office in Am must be exceedingly wealthy. Its population is mostly human, but a large minority of halflings live here as well. To the southwest, a monarchy known as Tethir has been racked by years of civil war. Known for its intrigue and instability, the forests are home to a variety of fae, lycanthropes, wyverns, and even dragons. as well as portals to the world of shape-shifting elves known as Lythari. Due to the political climate, visitors to Tethir are often treated with suspicion, especially if they are from organizations known to meddle in the affairs of others. To the southern edge of the continent is Kalimshan. For much of its history, the largely desert sultanate widely practiced slavery and still holds a class system for its population, with the Pashas as the ruling class. An extremely wealthy nation, Kalimshan has close ties to genies and Ifrit, and can trace its history back 9,000 years to the Kalim Empire. Eastern Faerûn and more remote lands contain exotic cultures and unique forms of government, such as the Magocracy of Thay. Ruled by the nefarious Red Wizards of Thay, it is the undead Lich Zastam that holds the title of High Regent. Feared by its neighbors for its relentless pursuit of arcane magic and necromancy, slavery is common in Thay, with the undead widely used for menial labor. Unsurprisingly, it is Bane, god of tyranny, terror, and hate, that acts as the patron deity of Thay, with Zastam having made a pact with him for power. One of the old empires, Mulholland, was destroyed by the Spell Plague, leaving the Empire of High Imiskar to capture its territories. The people here were originally ancient Egyptians from Earth, and had followed the same pantheon of gods in the form of avatars for their ruling class. Divided into cities Skyclave as a seat of power and Gaeldanath as a remnant vassal. During the Second Sundering, the gods of Mulholland would hear the pleas of their people and return to drive out the Imiskari, forcing them to flee to other dimensions and the plains of purple dust. Mulholland now stands as a restored theocratic empire ruled by god-kings. Land of Berserkers, Rashomon is isolated by rugged terrain in the northeast of Faerûn. Although they have cultivated a fiercely independent warrior culture, the lands here are ruled by a matriarchal confederacy known as the Witches of Rashomon. Well known for their skills in the arcane arts, it has made the nation a target for neighboring Thay, as the Magocracy attempted to invade Rashomon to plunder its secrets and magic. With such a vast number of cultures and territories, several independent organizations, orders, and cults have arisen across Faerûn to fulfill their own agendas. Founded in Cormanthir 3,000 years before the Dale Reckoning, the Harpers strive to do good. Originally intended to preserve history and folklore, they have evolved to also combat oppression and imbalance through the clandestine influencing of events. The group maintains a close relationship with the goddess Mystra and operates in decentralized cells, as opposed to fixed headquarters. Directly opposed to the Harpers is the Black Network of Centaurum. On the surface, they appear as a mercenary company, but are in fact an organized crime syndicate that seeks to amass wealth and influence. Founded in 1261 DR by the Dark Wizard Manchun, they are based in the fortress of Darkhold in the Western Heartlands. Although Zentel Keep was the Zentarim's original seat of power, it was destroyed during infighting that followed the death of Bane and the ascension of Cyric. Favoring individuals that display ruthlessness and skill, the Zentarim grant their agents a large amount of autonomy, carrying out blackmail, sabotage, smuggling, and assassinations. Allied with the Harpers and acting in a more overt fashion, whether it be militaristic or diplomatic goals, is the Lord's Alliance. A loosely confederated treaty organization, the Alliance consists of various city-states, monarchies, and influential groups that seek to ensure their mutual defense and prosperity. Assisted by the Order of the Gauntlet, they typically rally against collective threats to regional stability, such as orc hordes, powerful monsters, or invasions from Fae. The Council of Lords leads the organization and operates through appointed agents. Less concerned with political machinations of Faerûn is the Emerald Enclave. Aiming to preserve natural order, mediate conflicts, and combat corruption, they are another decentralized order made up of druids, rangers, and nomads. They are particularly active in areas of the Moonshae Isles, the High Forest, and frontier regions such as the Spine of the World and jungles of Chult. While seeking harmony between nature and civilization, they eliminate threats such as the undead, aberrations, and necromancy. Another of the more sinister organizations operating across the realm is the Cult of the Dragon. Their followers worship Tiamat, the evil god-queen of chromatic dragons, working to create a world ruled by dragons. To this end, the cult resurrects dead dragons as Draco-liches, conducts grand magical rituals, and collects the wealth that dragons crave, as well as stealing their eggs for indoctrination. Though their founder, Sumaster, had primarily intended to raise and worship Draco-liches, Severin Silgerain aims to summon Tiamat following the spell plague. No fantasy world would be complete without monsters to battle, and the Forgotten Realms contains a dizzying array of such creatures. From aberrations of nature to the disembodied spirits and animated corpses of the undead, to alien life forms from other planes so bizarre they defy description, the ancient forests, ruins, and caves of Toril hide many horrors. Some of these and their variants have become iconic to the setting, apart from the genre's usual goblins, kobolds, and orcs. Beholders are instantly recognizable, with their floating globular body containing a central eye and gaping maw, topped with various smaller eye stalks. These eye stalks can inflict differing effects on the beholder's opponents, such as disintegration, sleep, petrification, or instant death, while the central eye can emit an anti-magic cone. Each beholder views itself as the ultimate life form and is typically paranoid, preferring solitude in a lair surrounded by traps while slaves and lackeys carry out their commands. Bizarrely, they reproduce by literally dreaming new beholders into existence as they sleep. Among the undead, the Lich reigns supreme. Originally spellcasters that sought immortality, becoming a Lich is a complicated and horrific process. First, rare poisons, gems, souls, and organs from sentient creatures are gathered and combined for the ritual of Endless Night. Next, a phylactery is crafted to capture the subject's soul upon death. Finally, the transition into undeath takes place when the vile elixir is imbibed, causing an agonizing death and allowing whatever evil god they serve to raise them as a lich. In this form, they will have a mummified or skeletal appearance, retaining all the knowledge they held in life, and now augmented by an aura of fear. Driven by a lust for power, liches have a solitary existence, surrounded by tomes and magical artifacts in their lairs, often commanding lesser undead minions. Killing a lich's body will only result in its resurrection days later, making it necessary to destroy the phylactery containing its soul in order to triumph. Once ruling an empire that spanned the cosmos, illithid mind flayers now live deep within the Underdark. With rubbery skin and tentacles arrayed around a lamprey-like mouth, these humanoids are feared cephalophages that exclusively feed on the brains of sentient beings. Their society is structured around a nutrient pool of dead mind flayer brains, known as an elder brain, acting as a repository of knowledge and governing consciousness for the entire colony. Not often using traditional magic, illithids are a psychic species that can use psionics to stun foes, probe minds, and charm victims. The ultimate goal of Mind Flayer culture is domination, with their nautiloid ships able to travel space between dimensions as they capture others for food or to enslave as thralls. Their method of reproduction is no less gruesome, with a young tadpole placed into a captive's brain, where it will eventually consume and transform its host into a new Mind Flayer after a week. Towering over most adventurers, owlbears are a menace throughout the wilderness of the Forgotten Realms. Combining the hunting prowess and senses of an owl with the ferocity and brute strength of a bear, they are theorized to have been first created through magical experimentation. Owlbears are extremely territorial, especially when protecting their nest with a mate, often ambushing their prey with their sharp beak and talons. Adventurers are advised to heed its distinctive screeching hoot as a warning if they hear it in the distance, lest they fall victim to its primal might. Oozes and slimes stalk the shadows of the world's crypts, tunnels, and dungeons. With its distinctive shape, the gelatinous cube honestly consumes all organic matter in its path, thus acting as a kind of cleaner for whatever area it inhabits, as it seeks out heat sources and vibrations. Nearly transparent in the dark confines adventurers often explore, it is not difficult for the unaware to stumble into its surface, where they will be paralyzed, pulled inside the dense mass, and slowly digested after being suffocated. Other amorphous variants include the grey ooze or black pudding, that are capable of digesting metal and stone. Standing 70 feet tall and over 100 feet long, the Tarrasque is a force of pure destruction. Resembling a dinosaur clad in plated armor adorned with spikes, this is a unique creature believed to have been created long ago by gods or primordials. Much of its existence is spent slumbering deep under the surface of the planet, only awakening under specific circumstances such as magical cataclysms or stellar alignments. Not content with merely toppling castles or destroying villages, the Tarrasque leaves obliterated civilizations in its wake as it devours whatever is in its path. Slaying such a creature is no small feat, as it deflects all but the most devastating of spells and physical attacks. Even severely wounded, the monster will regenerate if even its essence remains, meaning only a wish spell can fully vanquish the Tarrasque once it has been killed. Of course, no breakdown of Toral's monsters would be complete without mentioning the titular dragons. Dragons of the chromatic variety lean toward evil alignments, having descended from Tiamat, such as conniving green dragons that live in deep forests, bestial white dragons dwelling in the Arctic, or the cruel black dragons that make their lairs in swamps. Metallic species of dragon are descendants of Bahamut, are seen as good, including wise gold dragons that test morals, protective bronze dragons that live near coastlines, and the hospitable brass variety. Depending on their subspecies, each dragon is capable of utilizing their breath as an elemental weapon, whether it be fire, frost, or acid. Both lineages are also known to watch over hordes of gold and magical relics they accumulate during their lifetime, although chromatic dragons typically build their collection through conquest and extortion, while metallic dragons acquire their wealth as gifts or tribute. Treasure is something dragons form a bond with and, in the case of chromatic dragons, will be sent into a murderous rage if even a single coin is stolen. As plots and quests unfold across the Forgotten Realms, there is no shortage of the need for heroes. From the legendary wizard Elminster to the drow ranger Drizzt Do'Urden, tales of bravery and adventure set the stage for Dungeons and Dragons. As with anything, how it ends can come down to a roll of the dice.
Hi, I'm Gwen, and you're watching Excalibur Forge's channel for gaming, readings, and more. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow along on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook.